In the heart of the untamed American Southwest, a tribe emerged with a reputation that struck fear into the hearts of many. They were known as the Apache, a people whose history is wrapped in mystery, marked by relentless battles and defined by their unwavering spirit. The Apaches were feared for their cruelty, destruction, and assaults on men, women, and children, sometimes even taking their scalps as trophies until their enemies' technological advancements outmatched them. However, there's more to their story than just battles and warfare. Welcome to another captivating episode of the Natives' Journals, where we embark on an enlightening journey through the pages of history. In today's series, we take a thrilling adventure into the mysterious past of the Apache tribe. The history of the Apache people is a tragic tale of the injustices inflicted upon Native American tribes by European settlers and, later, the United States government. The Apache, like many other indigenous groups, were subjected to a series of injustices that resulted in their displacement from their ancestral lands and the theft of their resources. We'll explore not only their legendary leaders like Geronimo, but also the details of their everyday existence, their religious convictions, and their lasting impact on the American Southwest. As you watch this video, don't forget to like and click on the subscribe button to join this amazing community. The word Apache is used for different Native American groups in North America and is famous in U.S. history, often because of Hollywood Western movies. These Apache tribes include the Chiricahuas, Jicarilla, Western Apache, Kiowa, Mescalero, and Lipan. Apache comes from the Zuni word Apache, or Apachu, which means enemy in Spanish. The Apache call themselves Inde or Dene, which means the people. Similarly, the names of these tribes have changed from their original local names, only becoming widely used after European settlers arrived. Certain individuals view the Navajo as potential distant relatives of Apache tribes. However, because the term Apache lacks a precise definition, there has been varying opinion. Numerous Apache tribes originally resided in the southwestern United States, but their history tells a fascinating tale. In prehistoric times, these tribes primarily inhabited the northern plains. Anthropological evidence suggests they migrated from the northwest Pacific coast to the southwest between the 13th and 15th centuries. As they moved eastward, they chose not to settle in the Canyonlands, but instead chose to reside in the southern plains of Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. The Apache tribe lived a nomadic lifestyle, relying on hunting and gathering, with buffalo as their central focus. They consumed buffalo meat, used its skin for clothing, and made tents from it for warmth. Traditionally, Apaches wore dresses made from animal hides, like buckskin and buffalo hides, crafting items such as moccasins, leggings, and tunics. They added decorations like beads and feathers. Their diet primarily consisted of buffalo meat, occasionally supplemented by berries and plants found during their journeys. However, they avoided eating fish or bear meat because they considered them impure. The Apaches were organized into extended families, each led by the most influential member serving as a chief advisor, responsible for the group's welfare. These family units lived near others of the same kind, coming together for social, religious, and military purposes. Leadership roles within a band were reserved for men, yet women held significant positions. Apache society followed a matrilineal structure, wherein, after marriage, the husband joined the wife's family, working and hunting alongside them. In the event of his wife's passing away, it was common for the husband to remarry, often selecting the sister or cousin of his late partner. This practice underscored the significance of both men and women within the Apache community. The Apache culture featured various annual celebrations, mainly centered around dances. One such dance, the Sunrise Dance, symbolized a girl's transition into womanhood and sought special blessings for her future. Additionally, there was the Dance of the Mountain Spirit, where dancers wore masks to impersonate these beings. The Apaches and neighboring groups maintained a peaceful relationship, facilitating economic exchanges. They traded agricultural products and pottery for buffalo meat and hides. This mutually beneficial arrangement enabled the Apache tribe to focus on buffalo hunting, while fostering harmonious relations with other communities. Things were going smoothly until the Spaniards arrived in the territory inhabited by the Apache and Pueblo peoples. They disrupted an established trade between Pueblo peoples and the Apaches. This affected other communities too, as the Apaches had strict and solemn laws deeply connected to the land and nature. They regarded life, customs, and laws as sacred, whether in celebrations or wartime. These rules were followed meticulously, without exception. Any dispute within the tribe that cannot be resolved privately must be brought to the attention of the chieftain. The matter then undergoes an investigation, or trial, presided over by the tribal chief himself, sometimes with the assistance of 2 or 3 leaders, to assess the accused's guilt. In cases of grave offenses, both the accused and accuser can bring as many witnesses as they desire without requiring them to take an oath. This trust stems from the belief that no one would provide false testimony regarding matters within their own community. Witnesses are free to speak without interruption or pressure regarding the issue. If the accused is found innocent, the trial concludes, and they forfeit the right to seek personal revenge outside this legal process. The Apache people had strict codes of conduct governing various aspects of their daily life. One clear example is how they behaved when near significant places like the Salt Lake, their salt source. Around this area, hunting and disturbing any creature were prohibited to allow all beings free access to this sacred location. War held deep religious significance for them, and they observed strict customs. Even mentioning common names was forbidden during wartime. Once the War Council decided on a campaign, a ceremonial war dance with war cries involved only warriors. Upon their return from battle, they celebrated by displaying the scalps of enemies they had taken. These scalps were mounted on poles or spears around a bonfire during dances, maintaining a solemn atmosphere. Ultimately, these pieces of meat with hair were discarded because they were seen as impurities. However, becoming a part of the warrior group posed a significant challenge. Possessing the right physical attributes, horse riding skills, and weapon mastery wasn't sufficient. Aspiring warriors had to undergo an initiation or trial, which involved accompanying the war party to battle at least 4 times without a single complaint or unauthorized speech. They served as humble attendants, caring for horses, cooking, or performing necessary tasks without being prompted, as they were expected to anticipate needs. They lacked the privilege of choosing their meals and had to accept whatever was offered without objection, often receiving inferior food. Following such trials, if all warriors deemed them hard-working, prudent, and courageous, they would be accepted into the group at the lowest rank. However, a single dissenting vote could prevent them from attaining the status of a warrior. The Apaches fiercely defended their claim to the land, considering their culture intertwined with nature. They saw life-giving forces everywhere, even in the air. The land held beauty, harmony, and power, and everything in it was full of life. Medicine men like Geronimo were a crucial connection to this world, possessing unique access to the land's supernatural power. Back then, people had a strong belief in the abilities of the medicine men, and this was a period when Indian spirituality held great sway. On the other hand, Geronimo possessed an extraordinary power akin to a coyote. The coyote is known for its elusive nature, constantly darting around, making it hard to predict. It could easily outsmart anyone. Geronimo, the most notorious of the Apache warriors, left a dark stain on Native American history. His path toward vengeance began in 1858, when a Sonora military unit massacred the Apache camp of Kaskaskia, resulting in the death of his mother, wife, and children. This horrific event scarred Geronimo for life, instilling in him an unyielding desire for revenge against the Mexicans. While he is famously known as Geronimo, his true name is Goy Ale, meaning he who yawns in his language. Born near the Heil River in Arizona on June 16, 1829, he belonged to the Chiricahua Apache tribe, which had transitioned into a settled farming community. In the early 1800s, Apache territory was within Mexico's borders. Mexico, however, didn't acknowledge the Apaches as the original inhabitants, and constant conflicts ensued. By the 1840s, the Apaches faced a dire threat of annihilation as they refused to relinquish their land and way of life to Mexico. American bounty hunters, like Stephen Meek, offered hefty rewards: $100 for the scalp of an Apache man, $50 for a woman, and $25 for a child. This violence was an unfortunate part of the Apache reality during Geronimo's upbringing. On March 5, 1851, he experienced firsthand the cruelty of Mexican forces when 400 soldiers attacked an unprotected Apache camp, massacring women and children. Among the tragic casualties were Geronimo's wife, mother, and children, an event that transformed him from a peaceful individual into the vengeful figure he is often depicted as. This transformation occurred as he embarked on a journey to negotiate peace, only to have his family brutally slaughtered behind him. In his autobiography, Geronimo expressed his despair. "I did not pray, I had no purpose left, and whenever I saw anything to remind me of my former happy days, my heart would ache for revenge." Despite enduring such violence, the Apaches remained resilient against Mexican forces. However, their lives were further complicated by international events. Apache territory was part of the vast land the United States acquired after the Mexican-American War, fulfilling an American aspiration of controlling the Southwest. From the Apache perspective, this land wasn't Mexico's to give away. They had maintained undisputed control over their homelands since time immemorial, relying on the land for sustenance. Yet, a new presence was emerging in Apache country: the American settlers. As American settlers arrived in Apache territory, they marveled at the fertile grasslands and abundant resources for cattle. Native Apache people observed these newcomers with curiosity, initially attempting to befriend and understand them. Some settlers, like the German immigrants who journeyed by covered wagon, were driven by economic hardship. Mining and prospecting for gold became prevalent, leading to conflicts as miners encroached on Apache land. Suspicion grew as miners seized more territory, leading to clashes, shootings, and strained relations between the Apache and settlers. This marked a deteriorating relationship that escalated from curiosity to mistrust and conflict over time. The arrival of settlers, driven by mining and overhunting, triggered conflicts with the Apache people. Some settlers disregarded treaties, viewing Apaches as obstacles to exploiting the land. By 1861, tensions had risen to the point of war as the Mexicans were encroaching on lands where Apaches had lived for generations. Geronimo, among others, resisted fiercely, sparking a 25-year-long conflict that ravaged the Southwest. Hatred for Apaches grew, leading to the formation of vigilante groups. In 1871, the Camp Grant massacre, led by William Ory, resulted in the brutal slaughter of over 100 Apache women and children, provoking public outrage. This event prompted a shift in government policy, advocating for the establishment of Indian colonies as a means to secure and pacify the West for both whites and Indians. While some settlers befriended Apaches, many viewed them as adversaries, setting the stage for a turbulent period of history marked by violence and broken treaties. The government introduced reservations as a guarantee of a permanent home for Native Americans. By 1872, major Apache groups, including the Chiricahua Apaches, had reservations on their homelands in Arizona. The Chiricahua Reservation was located in southeastern Arizona near Fort Bowie, where the Apache Wars began. Surprisingly, former foes, the Chiricahuas and soldiers, even formed friendships. Reservations brought peace and stability, allowing the Chiricahuas to enjoy their homeland with hunting and water, making them content in the mountains. Reservations, initially seen as a means of control, provided a sense of security and freedom for Native American communities. The government aimed for the Chiricahuas to farm, but provided inadequate support, leaving them struggling to raise cattle due to the unsuitable land and unfulfilled supply promises. Despite facing starvation, they maintained peace. If given cattle and proper guidance, they could have thrived. Despite initial hope for peace, by 1876, a detrimental federal policy emerged, leading to the closure of the Chiricahua Reservation and their relocation to San Carlos, alongside most other Arizona Apaches. This policy disrupted progress and marked a significant turning point, as the federal government aimed to centralize control over all Apaches and open Chiricahua land for settlement and mining. The commander at Fort Bowie warned of potential war if the Chiricahua Reservation were closed. a military escort arrived to relocate the Chiricahuas to San Carlos, with some opting for peace at any cost. But Geronimo, fueled by past betrayals, resisted. Refusing to surrender his land, he joined around 400 fellow Chiricahuas in escaping to Mexico, where his rebellion gained widespread attention. Geronimo boldly declared, "We won't yield our land, we'll fight to defend it," embodying their determination to stand up and resist relocation. Within a month, angered Chiricahua warriors had killed 68 settlers in an area that had enjoyed 4 years of peace. Some media outlets sensationalized these incidents, depicting the Chiricahuas as savage obstacles to settlers in the Southwest. The Army recognized that the conflict could endure unless Geronimo and the dissident Chiricahuas could be compelled to settle on the reservation. Despite others' attempts to dissuade him, Geronimo remained resolute and eager for battle. His raids made him infamous, with all actions attributed to him. Geronimo eventually became a wanted man. An Indian agent in San Carlos discovered his location in New Mexico and, with Apache police, captured him and brought him in chains to San Carlos, marking his first and only capture. The Chiricahuas showed little regard for the terrain or the other Apaches at San Carlos, highlighting their strong attachment to their homeland and resistance to relocation. The government's decision to concentrate many Apaches at the San Carlos reservation created a volatile situation. Apaches strongly disliked this place due to its arid and inhospitable nature, which remains the same today. This contrasted sharply with their mountainous homeland with trees and abundant water. They were forcibly taken from their familiar environment to San Carlos, a situation they found terrible. The Apaches' deep attachment to their homeland and the harsh conditions at San Carlos made the relocation a distressing chapter in their history. San Carlos was described as a dusty and desolate place where some Indian agents seemed disinterested in helping. Supplies often fell short due to theft before reaching the reservation. Soldiers treated the Apaches rudely and dehumanized them. In 1878, after 2 years at San Carlos, the Chiricahuas were relocated to the neighboring Fort Apache Reservation, seemingly ending the land war but sparking a cultural battle. A native religious movement threatened Apache traditions, but the Army brutally suppressed it, including killing an influential medicine man. Safety seemed only in the Sierra Madre, prompting Geronimo and Chief Naiche to flee to Mexico with 400 followers. General George Crook, regarded as the last hope for peace, treated Apaches as equals and valued honesty and promises. He aimed to locate and persuade the Chiricahuas to return peacefully from the Sierra Madre. However, he knew it would be a daunting task, even with white soldiers, to subdue them in their own territory. Despite the daunting challenge, a knowledgeable Apache scout named Peaches led the way into the Sierra Madre, where they eventually located the Chiricahuas after 40 days of searching. General Crook promised them better conditions on the reservation, and they agreed to return. However, within 2 years, Geronimo, Naiche, and around 100 others found reservation life unbearable and escaped once more. The Army pursued them, leading to another peace conference with General Crook at Cañon de los Muertos in early 1886, offering hope for the end of the Apache Wars. Crook realized that capturing Geronimo and his group was nearly impossible, as they were highly skilled and elusive. He knew he had to proceed cautiously to avoid any actions that might provoke suspicion and put his life at risk. Meetings and negotiations took place over the next few days. Remarkably, General Crook had no troops with him during these talks. Geronimo wanted to put the past behind and eliminate those responsible for wrongdoing. Crook presented Geronimo with a choice: continue the conflict or surrender unconditionally. Returning immediately to the reservation was not an option. Crook, Geronimo, Naiche, the true chief, and others reached a compromise in subsequent meetings. They agreed to surrender and, after a couple of years in exile from the Southwest, would be allowed to return to the reservation. This marked a significant turning point in the negotiations and a potential end to the conflict. Eventually, Geronimo surrendered, saying he did so to prevent the tribe's extinction. Chihuahua, Loco, and others also gave up because they realized it was pointless to keep fighting against the growing numbers of white people and Mexicans. fearing eventual annihilation. However, shortly after they agreed to surrender, a rebellious white man frightened Geronimo by claiming he would face a hanging for murder in Arizona, where he was indeed under indictment. Fearing prosecution, Geronimo, Naiche, and a small group fled south into the Sierra Madre, resolute to continue their campaign. General Crook promptly reported this development to his superior, General Sheridan, who expressed surprise at Geronimo's escape. Crook maintained his scouts' loyalty and believed they couldn't have prevented Geronimo's departure. The disagreement led Sheridan to order a change in Crook's strategy, frustrating the experienced general. Feeling attached to his approach after 8 years of hard work in the region, Crook requested relief from his command, believing his strategy was the most likely to succeed in the end. This marked a challenging phase in the pursuit of Geronimo and the Chiricahuas. Subsequently, General Nelson A. Miles replaced Crook, initiating a new type of warfare against the Apaches. Miles believed they could outmatch the Apaches with modern intelligence and equipment. He deployed 5,000 men, a quarter of the regular army, with the aim of pressuring the Chiricahuas into surrender. Knowing the soldiers were pursuing them, the Chiricahuas would engage in hit-and-run tactics, making it difficult for the soldiers to locate them. Battles resulted in casualties, such as Corporal Scott's leg amputation during a fight near the Santa Barbara Peaks. Geronimo's knowledge of the land, water sources, and strategic movements allowed them to evade capture for 6 months. However, exhaustion from constant evasion prompted word to reach Fort Apache that Geronimo might be open to surrender talks, marking a potential turning point in their long and grueling conflict. Many elderly people resented Geronimo for causing the deaths of their relatives needlessly, including innocent children and mothers, all to defend his cause and retain their land. The loss of numerous lives led to pleas for his surrender. 2 Chiricahuas, Caita, and his relative Martin, were employed as Army scouts to locate Geronimo in Mexico. Lieutenant Charles Gatewood, familiar to Geronimo, accompanied them to propose terms for surrender. These Indian scouts played a pivotal role in initiating communication with Geronimo, as they were part of his extended family and shared a strong bond with his band. In that situation, it was unlikely that Geronimo would harm them. Caita and Martin tracked the small band to a well-known stronghold in the Taurus Mountains, 50 miles south of the border. They separated from Gatewood's party and climbed to where the hostiles hid. Caita's grandfather, acting as a lookout with binoculars, spotted movement in the canyon below. Recognizing the group carrying a white flag as their own people, they debated whether to let them approach, as there were specific instructions not to do so. After lengthy discussions, Martin and Caita managed to persuade Geronimo, Naiche, and the others to meet with Gatewood by the river. Gatewood presented them with a stark choice: surrender or face a relentless fight to the end. To persuade them to surrender, Gatewood revealed that their families at Fort Apache were being transported as prisoners of war to Florida, including Rui Darrow's father. Soldiers called all the Apaches together for a roll call, then loaded them onto wagons and a train, treating them like cattle. This news left Geronimo's small band feeling isolated. Before surrendering, they held a meeting among themselves. Geronimo, Naiche, and a few others concluded that they couldn't bear to see more of their people killed while constantly pursued. This realization likely prompted most chiefs, women, the elderly, and children to surrender. Had they been alone, they might have continued their resistance. Geronimo finally surrendered on September 4, 1886. The surrender occurred at Skeleton Canyon in southeastern Arizona, marked by a pile of rocks, symbolizing the end of 25 years of Apache warfare. The Chiricahuas, the last Southwest Indians to resist, faced a stark new reality as they surrendered. Their cherished land would now only exist in their memories. Geronimo, Naiche, and others were swiftly imprisoned at Fort Bowie, joined by Chiricahua Army scouts like Caita and Martin, who had been instrumental in guiding the army to the last holdouts. This betrayal deeply wounded the Chiricahuas. Not only had they lost their loyal scouts, but General Miles disregarded the terms of surrender previously agreed upon by the Apaches and General Crook. Broken promises and violated treaties were particularly painful for the Chiricahuas, as their word was sacred. They expected to return home after surrendering. But that dream faded as they endured 27 years of exile instead of the promised 2. Geronimo, Naiche, and their small group were forcefully relocated to Florida on a train, leaving behind their homeland in Arizona forever. Arizona's politicians influenced this decision, determined to send them as far away as possible, ultimately leading them to St. Augustine, Florida. After surrendering, Naiche, Geronimo, and other warriors were divided among different forts in Florida. Some ended up at Fort Pickens in the western part, while around 400 were crowded into Fort Marion in St. Augustine on the Atlantic coast. Life in Florida was a stark contrast to their arid southwest homeland. The intense heat, muggy climate, and overcrowded conditions in the forts affected their health. Sicknesses like malaria and yellow fever, unfamiliar to the Chiricahuas, claimed many lives. People were carried out of the fort daily after succumbing to these diseases. The Chiricahuas maintained their cultural identity, beliefs, and solidarity despite these harsh conditions. This resilience helped them endure the challenging environment and widespread illness. Many children were sent to a school for Indians in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which posed another painful separation for their parents. The climate and living conditions there led to the development of tuberculosis, and tragically, many children never returned home, further deepening the suffering of the Chiricahuas, who had already lost their land. This marked a significant cultural change, with haircuts and Western clothing imposed on the young students. Despite these changes, their Apache identity remained strong. Life within the overcrowded Florida forts became increasingly difficult, leading to their relocation to Mount Vernon Barracks near Mobile, Alabama, which offered little improvement in conditions. The stifling, stagnant air contrasted sharply with their homeland's open spaces, intensifying their sense of confinement. By 1896, after years in the Deep South, they were moved again to land provided by the Comanche and Kiowa at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. The arrival was emotional, with the sound of coyotes in the night triggering tears of nostalgia. At Fort Sill, they experienced relative stability, working with cattle and enjoying the sense of having a true reservation. This marked a significant change in their circumstances. After surrendering in 1886, Geronimo spent the next 23 years at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He transitioned into a grandfatherly figure. During this time, he was invited to attend fairs and festivals celebrating the Old West. He became a well-known celebrity and a popular attraction at Wild West shows, while Naiche converted to Christianity. Despite attending church occasionally, Geronimo maintained his traditional Apache practices, including healing and ceremonies. However, his belief in his protective powers waned with age. Unfortunately, in 1909, an unfortunate accident marked the end of his life. While intoxicated, he fell from a horse and spent the night outdoors, succumbing to hyperthermia. This incident occurred when he was 80 years old. While he was often portrayed as a relentless savage in myth, in reality, he was a man who had fought fiercely for his homeland and way of life. Towards the end of his life, he might have regretted surrendering and wished to have died in his native land. Geronimo was not merely the Wild West caricature, but a proud Apache leader. He represented the Apache's last resistance to Western expansion, known for their fierce warrior spirit. Geronimo's leadership led to significant uprisings against the growing U.S. government influence. His unwavering resistance earned admiration from both allies and adversaries. While some Native American groups surrendered in the early 1870s, others, like the Apache, clung to their traditional ways and continued raids. In the late 19th century, the U.S. government initiated programs to assimilate tribes into white American families. Many Apache families eventually settled in Mexico and the United States. Today, the largest Apache populations reside in Oklahoma, Arizona, California, and New Mexico. In 1913, after 27 years in captivity, the Chiricahuas were released but couldn't return to their land, now part of Fort Sill Army Base. They faced a choice: stay in Oklahoma or move to Mescalero. 82 remained in Oklahoma, while 187 joined the Mescalero Apaches in New Mexico, influenced by their support during their years on the run. It marked a fresh start for the Chiricahuas. Though they started anew, the memory of their lost homelands persisted. many Chiricahuas returned to Arizona, gathering at Skeleton Canyon's rock pile to honor their ancestors' memory. Thanks for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this story about the history of the Apache tribe, kindly share your thoughts in the comments box. Remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our captivating history and facts videos. Click on the notification bell for instant alerts to stay connected and be the first to watch our new content. Thanks for your support.